It was never a conspiracy. It was always policy. By the time most people noticed, it was already done. The whispers of a unified North American currency, once dismissed as fringe theory, had solidified into fact. Not with a bang, but with the quiet hum of servers and the silent settlement of accounts. It wasn't called the Amero in public documents, of course. The language was deliberately technical, designed to be impenetrable to the public and reassuring to the markets. It was introduced as a settlement layer, a cross-border payment rail, a technical upgrade for a world growing more uncertain. But its function was unmistakable, a single, integrated monetary system for a continent bracing for change. The dollar, the peso, the loonie, they still existed in people's pockets, but behind the scenes, a new architecture was firmly in place. The foundation was laid over decades, in plain sight. The North American Free Trade Agreement of the 1990s was the first step, fusing the continent's supply chains into a single, interdependent machine. Then came the Security and Prosperity Partnership in 2005, a less publicized initiative that began harmonizing regulations and policies behind closed doors. Finally, the USMCA Treaty updated the framework for the digital age. Each agreement was a stepping stone, building the institutional and legal scaffolding required for deeper integration. The documents weren't secret, they were just unread by the public, filled with technical language about regulatory cooperation and economic efficiency. This wasn't just about trade, it was about creating a deeply integrated economic space where national borders became less relevant to capital. The goal, understood by its architects, was to build a structure so interconnected that unraveling it would be unthinkable. In the years leading up to the shift, the markets and ministries moved in lockstep. Central banks in Ottawa, Mexico City and Washington began to quietly synchronize their reporting windows and liquidity operations. Foreign exchange corridors, once volatile, saw their fluctuations narrow to a near-fixed band. This wasn't an accident, it was managed convergence. On the fringes, novelty Amero coins appeared online, sold to collectors and conspiracy theorists. They were a useful distraction, drawing public attention to a physical object that would never exist, while the real architecture was being built not in mints, but in the digital clearinghouses of the banking system. The Bank for International Settlements published papers on cross-border payment systems. The plans were discussed, not in parliaments, but in the discrete forums where global finance is truly governed. Then came the trigger. The established post-war global order began to fray. When President Trump threatened to withdraw from long-standing alliances like NATO and initiated jarring tariff shocks, a new calculus of risk emerged. The pillars of global stability, predictable trade, reliable security guarantees, and institutional norms were suddenly in question. For the technocrats and strategic planners tasked with ensuring continental economic security, this uncertainty was an existential threat. The volatility of global politics demanded a regional solution, a firewall. Amid the renewed threats to the international system, contingency plans that had been gathering dust for years were activated. The argument was simple and compelling. In a world of chaos, North America had to consolidate to protect itself. When it came, no fanfare followed. It wasn't trumpeted on the news. It was introduced in a software update. The first phase was the quiet migration of large-scale transactions. Cross-border energy trades, automotive parts invoices, and agricultural shipments began settling on the new unified ledger. Then, corporate payrolls for multinational companies followed. For an auto parts supplier in Ontario, paying its engineers in Michigan and its assembly line workers in Guanajuato became a single instantaneous process. The benefits were immediate and tangible. Transaction friction vanished, and currency conversion costs were eliminated. For the average citizen, the first sign was an almost imperceptible change in their banking app, or a notice from their employer about more efficient cross-border salary payments. The system was switched on, not announced. It was a transition by stealth, designed to become essential before it was ever debated. The effects created a new class of winners and losers. Large corporations that operated across the three countries saw their profits soar as currency risk disappeared. The logistics and finance industries thrived. But for small and medium-sized businesses that had built their models on currency differentials, it was an economic shock. A small exporter in Texas, who relied on a favorable exchange rate to sell to Mexico, suddenly found their competitive edge erased overnight. Savers who held assets in a currency that was now effectively pegged at a disadvantage saw their wealth diminish. There were scattered protests, quickly dismissed as the complaints of those unable to adapt. There was also quiet applause in boardrooms, where the stability was celebrated as a triumph of pragmatic governance over messy politics. Within a few fiscal quarters, the new normal had set in. The habit stuck. Cross-border travel and tourism became seamless, with digital payments flowing effortlessly. Remittances, the lifeblood for millions of families, became cheaper and faster. A construction worker in Los Angeles could send money home to his family in Oaxaca, and the funds would arrive in seconds, not days, with negligible fees. This was a key selling point that helped build popular acceptance. The once distinct monetary policies of the three nations began to converge, with public messaging from their central banks becoming increasingly standardized. Governance shifted away from elected legislatures and toward a series of technocratic committees, composed of unelected experts from finance and industry. They managed the system's parameters, making decisions about liquidity and capital flows far from the public eye. The era of distinct national monetary sovereignty in North America had quietly ended. The Amero was treated as a myth until it wasn't. It was a ghost that lived in academic papers and closed-door talks, a contingency plan for a crisis that finally arrived. It has already reshaped the continent, creating a powerful economic bloc insulated from global shocks. While threats of political chaos shook old alliances, the cold, hard calculus of economic survival favored consolidation. It wasn't a vote for a new flag or a new anthem. It was a quiet, pragmatic surrender of monetary control in exchange for stability. The system came not with a trumpet, but with a transaction confirmation. It wasn't debated, it was simply introduced. And now, it is simply there. A permanent feature of the landscape, its logic so deeply embedded that to question it seems impossible. The path was chosen, and the continent continues down it, silently.